Hey guys, welcome back. If you know who I am, I appreciate you coming back. If not, my name is Madeleine Klein, and I talk about Canadian true crime and missing persons. Today I want to talk about Winnipeg serial killer Jeremy Skibicki. He has been named responsible for at least 4 murders of Indigenous women, and who knows how many more there are. Let's get right into it. This is the story of Jeremy Skibicki and the missing and murdered Indigenous women of Manitoba. I want to get right into the thick of it. This man is a monster. Jeremy Skibicki is a violent, misogynistic neo-Nazi. We will start 8 years ago. Back in June of 2015, he assaulted his then pregnant girlfriend by grabbing her hair, repeatedly punching her in the face. He even attempted to suffocate her with a pillow and told her he would kill her if she called police. After spending only 2 months behind bars, Skibicki is found guilty of assaulting this woman and sentenced to 2 years probation. So that means no jail time, because just 4 months later, in December of 2015, another woman, who was then Skibicki's common law partner, filed for a protection order against him, stating, quote, "He won't stop until I'm dead." Her request is denied for an unknown reason. The next thing I can find about him comes 3 years later on September 4th, 2018, when he marries his now estranged ex-wife. She too would end up filing for a protection order against Skibicki and thankfully be granted one exactly 1 year after they were married on September 4th, 2019. Her request stated that she had been under the influence when she married Skibicki and actually checked into detox 4 days later for a meth addiction. She also suffered a catalog of abuse and death threats from Skibicki throughout their marriage. He would force her to take medication that would make her sleep and then rape her. He monitored everything she did, oftentimes not being able to leave the apartment. And then, of course, there was all the physical abuse, and he also attempted to suffocate her with a pillow. In January of 2021, this same ex-wife alleged Skibicki assaulted her again. This time, she was chased with a knife and beaten with his fists and a cane. He was charged with assault with a weapon and assault causing bodily harm, but these charges were stayed. And in December of 2021, Skibicki is acquitted for breaking his no-contact order with his ex-wife. The judge deemed her testimony unreliable due to memory issues. However, these memory issues are in direct correlation with the injuries she sustained at the hands of Skibicki. She had been diagnosed with post-concussion syndrome, which has a major effect on memory. I want to know who this judge is because I would like a word. By October of 2021, it's alleged by a roommate that Skibicki would go to shelters for every meal, often returning to his apartment with a different Indigenous woman. This is exactly how he met his ex-wife. She was waiting for a bed at a shelter. These women were transient, often carrying all of their belongings with them and using drugs. Skibicki was very obviously being a predator toward the most vulnerable. Although Skibicki's ex-wife is no longer with him and thankfully survived the abuse, she's still suffering greatly. Not only is she dealing with the lingering effects of being in an abusive relationship, but she is also suffering major survivor's guilt. It is believed that between the months of March 2022 and May of 2022, Jeremy Skibicki murdered 4 Indigenous women. March 15th, 2022 is when authorities believe Skibicki killed Buffalo Woman. Buffalo Woman was found, but remains unidentified. This woman is said to be in her 20s and Indigenous, but still remains unidentified. The Indigenous community gave her the name Buffalo Woman until she can be properly identified. All we know about this woman is that this was her coat. They need absolutely any information that might pertain on who this baby fat jacket belonged to. March 15th would also be the last day 26-year-old Mercedes Myron would be seen or heard from. On May 1st, 2022, 39-year-old Morgan Harris was last reported to be seen in Winnipeg around Main Street and Henry Avenue. It is believed Morgan Harris was murdered on or around the same day she was last seen. Police believe 26-year-old Mercedes Myron was killed just 3 days later on May 4th, 2022. Then only 10 days later, either May 14th or 15th, police believe Skibicki killed 24-year-old Rebecca Cantois. On May 16th, partial remains are found in a dumpster that are later identified as Rebecca Cantois'. This discovery prompted a more thorough search of the garbage bins in the area. May 16th is also the day that Morgan Harris was reported missing, and it's also the day that police believe the bodies of Harris and Myron are transported to the Prairie Green landfill. 2 days later, on May 18th, Jeremy Skibicki is arrested in connection of the death of Rebecca Cantois, who they would positively identify the next day on May 19th. Skibicki is formally charged with first-degree murder and detained, his residence is searched, and police announce there is another possible crime scene at another landfill, the Brady landfill. On June 2nd, 2022, the police begin their 2-week search of the Brady landfill. On June 15th, they successfully locate partial human remains of Rebecca Cantois. 5 days later, on June 20th, investigators determine the remains of Morgan Harris and Mercedes Myron are most likely in the Prairie Green landfill. However, this information isn't made public until December, after over 10,000 loads of garbage had been dumped on the location where they believe these women are. On December 1st, 2022, Jeremy Skibicki is charged for the murders of Morgan Harris, Mercedes Myron, and the unidentified woman who would be named Buffalo Woman on December 4th. At this point, Skibicki was already being detained for the murder of Rebecca Cantois. On December 6, 2022, police finally announced they believe the remains of Mercedes Myron and Morgan Harris are in the Prairie Green landfill. However, it would be unfeasible to search the location. It took 2 days of phone calls from the families of the victims and other Indigenous leaders to have operations at the landfill halted. Operations were halted on December 8th, and on December 9th, police then decide to say they're looking for a way to search. So, as always, something isn't done until hell is raised by the loved ones of the victims. To add insult to injury, it's later clarified by the Premier of Manitoba that only one block of landfill operations were halted, not the entire thing. This is so gross. They knew that the bodies of Morgan Harris and Mercedes Myron were in the Prairie Green landfill in June and waited 6 months to say anything, and then decided that it wasn't feasible to look for them. Perhaps if a search was performed immediately, we wouldn't be here. It's a tale as old as time. Authorities just don't seem to care about missing and murdered Indigenous women, and it's despicable. So just days after the police say it's not feasible to search this landfill for the remains of these women, the feds come in and say that they're going to fund a study, not a search, a study. They are going to pay for a study on whether it is possible to search the landfill for remains. So they're not funding a search. They're funding a study to determine if they can search. Is it just me, or does this not really make sense? Take that money and go balls to the walls on searching the landfill. I am certain there are more than just the remains of Harris and Myron in there. This search could bring closure to many families and possible justice for the perpetrators. The argument of the search being too costly, to me, is not a good argument. Money doesn't even exist anymore. It's all a number on a computer. And look at the amount of money we're willing to dump into unimportant things, like a plane for city police, or a new stadium or arena, or whatever. Let's talk about and remember the victims. Buffalo Woman is believed to be Skibicki's first known victim. Unfortunately, we know very little about her, only that she was in her 20s and Indigenous, and this was her coat. The fact that she remains unidentifiable is disturbing. What did Skibicki do to her? It's believed 39-year-old Morgan Harris was his next victim. Morgan was a wonderful and loyal mother and grandmother. I'm going to link a video below of one of Morgan Harris's daughters, Cambria Harris, speaking about the unjust and horrific treatment of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. This is just a still shot of that conference, but look at the hurt, anger, and sadness in her face as she pleads with the government to not let her mother's final resting place be a landfill. You can hear the emotions in her voice, and this clip actually brought me to tears. I want to talk about Cambria for a minute. She is only 21 years old and a force to be reckoned with. Cambria has been fighting for MMIW and calling for justice since her early teens. She was just 13 years old in 2014 when the body of 15-year-old Tina Fontaine was pulled from the Red River. Cambria marched for justice holding a sign that read, "I will not be next." She continues to advocate and call for justice for the missing and murdered Indigenous women of Manitoba and the rest of the country, most recently speaking in Ottawa on December 6th, demanding the Prairie Green and Brady landfills be searched because the Manitoba police refuse. When she said, "Your government started this genocide, and now it's your turn to help us end it," goosebumps spread throughout my body. That statement is so powerful and important because it's so true. I'm going to link a really great article about Cambria below. I just have so much adoration for this young woman. I am really looking forward to see what the future holds for her and the change she's going to make. The next victim was 26-year-old Mercedes Myron. Mercedes leaves behind 2 children of her own, a 7 and 8-year-old. Mercedes was described as just the nicest and sweetest girl. She was a lot of fun and had a huge heart. 24-year-old Rebecca Cantois would be the last to be killed, but the first to be found. However, they found partial remains of her in May and more partial remains in June when they searched the Brady landfill. I said this before, but the fact that Buffalo Woman remains unidentified and Rebecca Cantois' remains were found scattered means that Jeremy Skibicki did more than take these women's lives. He mutilated them and undignified them. These are only 4 of the over 200 missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls in Manitoba. How many more lives is Jeremy Skibicki responsible for? When I heard about the horrific condition of Rebecca Cantois and Buffalo Woman, I immediately thought of Jana Williams. Jana Williams is a young Indigenous woman found murdered in a suitcase on the streets of Winnipeg in March of 2021. Skibicki was a free man in March of 2021, and the details of how Jana was found ring eerily similar to his other crimes. Jana's murder remains unsolved. Skibicki is set to stand trial just next week, February 9th, 2023, and plans to plead not guilty on all charges. I am hoping justice will be served and he is declared a dangerous offender and sentenced indeterminately, and then never granted parole. This is why I support the death penalty. Someone like this cannot be rehabilitated, and the pain he has caused to so many families is unforgivable. Eye for an eye. He took 4 lives, who knows how many more. So I guess that's it for now on Winnipeg serial killer Jeremy Skibicki. I am going to follow that trial closely and provide updates when possible. Until then, there have been protests and blockades being performed at the Prairie Green and Brady landfills, and I hope they continue. How can police announce they know these women are in the landfill and then offer no help or solutions on bringing these women home? It's classless and cowardly. Cambria said in an interview with APTV, police are like beating around the bush. If they're not capable of bringing these women home, just say that. But I think it's not an instance of capability. They searched the Brady landfill and found the remains of Rebecca Cantois. As always, I'm going to post some links below. Please check them out. I'll be linking Cambria Harris's powerful address to the government in Ottawa. I'll link an article about her as well and the APTV interview with her. She is so well spoken. I'll have my link tree posted if you want to check out any of my other content or subscribe. But I think that is it for me for today. Thank you all so much for being here. I can't put my appreciation into words. Like, subscribe, comment who you want to hear next, and I will catch you guys next time. Bye.